This 10 years old girl was abounded after the death of her parents, and she had been living alone for more than 3 years now. And her only brother, who is 13 years, is nowhere to be found. This girl has been living by herself, suffering no relatives to support her. Her name was Amara. She did not remember the exact day her childhood ended. Perhaps it was the afternoon the social worker stopped coming, or the morning she realized the landlord had changed the locks and placed her small bundle of clothes outside the door. Or maybe it was the night she fell asleep hungry and woke up not crying anymore. At 7 years old, she had held her mother's hand in the hospital and whispered, "Don't go. I'll be good." At 8, she stood beside a grave too small for all the love her parents had carried. At 10, she stopped expecting anyone to save her. When the town of Darsfield was small and unkind in the quiet ways that hurt the most. People were busy. People were tired. People had their own problems. They passed by the thin girl with oversized clothes and two serious eyes without really seeing her. For the first few months after her parents' death, neighbors had brought casseroles and pity, but pity expires quickly when it demands commitment. Papers were filed, promises were made. An uncle said he would come. An aunt said she couldn't. So her brother Daniel had been taken to stay temporarily with a distant family friend in another city. Just until things settle, they had said. Things never settled. Daniel disappeared into the system like a letter without an address. The family friend moved away. Calls went unanswered. Records were lost. And somehow, through a chain of neglect and oversight, Amara was left behind. She did not understand how a child could slip through cracks so wide. For 3 years, she survived the only way she knew how. She collected leftover bread from the bakery at closing time. Mr. Halverson, the owner, pretended not to see her waiting near the back door. "Can't sell what's stale," he would mutter, leaving a bag beside the trash. She learned which houses put out half-eaten fruit in their compost bins. She learned how to layer newspaper inside her shoes when the winter bit too hard. She learned that the library was warm and that if she kept her head down, no one would ask too many questions. But loneliness was a hunger bread could not fill. Every night she would sit on the steps of an abandoned house at the edge of town, the closest thing she had to a home, and whisper to the darkness, "Daniel, I'm here." She imagined he could hear her somehow. She imagined he was looking at the same moon. If there was one thing Amara refused to let go of, it was kindness. It would have been easy to grow sharp, to steal, to lie, to harden. But her mother had once told her, "When the world is cruel, be the proof that it doesn't have to be." So she shared her stale bread with stray dogs. She helped an old woman carry groceries in exchange for nothing more than a smile. She returned a dropped wallet with every coin still inside, even though her stomach ached. The wallet belonged to Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson was not a warm woman. She was known for her pressed suits and sharp words. She ran the largest textile factory in Darsfield and believed firmly in self-reliance. When Amara handed her the wallet, she did not smile. "You didn't take anything?" she asked, suspicion lining her voice. "No, ma'am." "Why not?" Amara hesitated. "Because it's yours." Mrs. Patterson studied the girl. Dirt smudged her cheeks. Her sweater was too thin for the autumn wind. "What's your name?" she asked. "Amara." "Where are your parents?" "They're gone." "And you live with myself." Mrs. Patterson frowned, but she was a busy woman. She nodded curtly and walked away. Yet that night, as she sat alone in her large dining room, Amara's eyes would not leave her mind. Mrs. Patterson had built her life from nothing. She had grown up poor, clawed her way through hardships, and believed that anyone who worked hard enough could survive. But something about that child unsettled her certainty. When the next morning she drove to the abandoned house at the edge of town, she told herself it was just curiosity. She found Amara sweeping the porch with a broken broom. "Why are you cleaning this place?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "So it looks like someone cares about it," Amara replied. Mrs. Patterson felt something shift inside her. She could have called the authorities. She could have arranged for a foster home, but bureaucracy was slow and her instincts were quicker. Would you like work?" she asked instead. Amara's eyes widened. "Work?" "At the factory, nothing dangerous. Sorting scraps, sweeping floors. You'll be paid." Amara nodded immediately, pride and survival braided tightly together in her chest. That was how it began. Every afternoon after the factory closed, Amara would sweep and organize. She worked harder than anyone expected from a child her age. She saved every coin she earned in a small tin hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the abandoned house. Not for toys, not for sweets, for Daniel. She was certain she would find him one day. Seasons changed. 3 years stretched into almost 4. Amara grew taller but remained thin. Her hands grew calloused. Her heart remained soft. One winter evening, as snow fell in heavy silence, she found a boy crouched near the factory dumpsters, searching for food. He looked about 13. Ere her breath caught. "Daniel," she whispered. The boy looked up. His eyes were the same color as her brother's, deep brown, but they did not recognize her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I thought you were someone else." He shrugged. "It's okay." She handed him half her bread. "You can have it," she said. "What about you?" "I'll be fine." He hesitated. "Why would you give this to me?" "Because I know what it's like to be hungry." The boy studied her for a long moment before accepting. His name was Elias. He had run away from an abusive foster home 2 towns over. He trusted no one, but he trusted her. Over the next few weeks, Amara shared what little she had. She showed him the warm corner of the library, the bakery's back door schedule, the safest places to sleep. She never told him how much she missed her brother. She never burdened him with her grief. Kindness, she believed, was not transactional. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patterson watched. She saw how Amara slipped coins into the hands of other struggling workers. She saw how she stayed late to finish tasks others avoided. She saw how the stray dogs followed her like loyal guards. Something inside the stern businesswoman softened. One evening, she called Amara into her office. "Why do you give away your money?" she asked bluntly. Amara shifted uncomfortably. "Because I remember not having any. And if you keep giving it away, you'll always have nothing." Amara looked up, meeting her gaze. "That's not true. I still have me." Mrs. Patterson had no reply. Karma does not move loudly. It does not announce itself with thunder. It unfolds quietly like dawn. The textile factory had been struggling. Competitors undercut prices. Investors grew nervous. Then one day a major client canceled their contract unexpectedly. Panic rippled through Darsfield. Hundreds of workers depended on that factory. Mrs. Patterson locked herself in her office for hours. When she emerged, she looked 10 years older. "We may have to close," she told her managers. The news spread quickly. Fear followed. Amara heard whispers among workers she had come to care for. That night, she opened her tin box. Every coin she had saved for Daniel glittered under the dim candlelight. She did not hesitate long. The next morning, she walked into Mrs. Patterson's office and placed the tin on her desk. "What's this?" the woman asked. "My savings." Mrs. Patterson blinked. "And why are you giving this to me?" "For the factory," the woman almost laughed. "Child, this won't fix anything." "I know," Amara said softly, "but you gave me work when no one else did. I want to help." Mrs. Patterson stared at the small pile of coins, years of sacrifice. Something broke open in her heart. That afternoon, she made a decision that shocked the entire board. Instead of closing, she sold her vacation properties and invested her personal wealth to modernize the factory. She introduced fair wages, community programs, and outreach initiatives. "If we survive," she told her team, "we survive together." The gamble worked. A new eco-conscious brand partnered with the factory after hearing about its transformation. Orders surged, jobs were saved, and Amara's small tin of coins remained on Mrs. Patterson's desk, not as capital, but as a reminder. Karma had begun to circle. Months later, a letter arrived at the factory addressed to Mrs. Patterson. It was from a social services officer in another state. They were investigating old case files. A boy named Daniel Rivera had been found working illegally at a mechanic's shop. He claimed to have a younger sister in Darsfield. Mrs. Patterson's hands trembled. She called Amara into her office. "I think," she said carefully, "we may have found your brother." The world went silent for Amara, then loud, then silent again. 2 weeks later, a car pulled into Darsfield carrying a thin boy with cautious eyes. Amara stood frozen on the factory steps. "Daniel?" she whispered. He stepped forward slowly. He had grown taller. His face was sharper. But when he said her name, Amara, it was the same voice that once told her bedtime stories. They ran to each other. 3 years of loneliness collapsed into one embrace. Workers watched with tears in their eyes. Mrs. Patterson stood apart, her own vision blurred. Daniel had suffered. When he had been moved from home to home, used for labor, forgotten, but he had never stopped looking for his sister. "I used to wish on every star," he said that night as they sat together in a small apartment Mrs. Patterson had arranged for them above the factory offices. "I talked to the moon," Amara replied. He laughed softly. "Me too." Karma, when it returns, does not always restore what was lost, but sometimes when hearts remain open, despite suffering, it restores something even greater. Mrs. Patterson did not stop there. She legally adopted both children. The woman who once believed only in self-reliance now believed in responsibility to others, to community, to compassion. Under her guidance, Amara and Daniel went to school for the first time in years. Amara excelled in literature. Daniel loved mechanics. Elias, the runaway boy, was also found and brought into a safer foster home through the factory's new outreach program. Years passed. Amara grew into a young woman with steady eyes and an unshakable gentleness. She never forgot the taste of stale bread or the ache of cold nights. When she turned 18, she stood beside Mrs. Patterson at a ceremony unveiling the new Rivera Community Center, named after her parents. It offered shelter, legal aid, and support for children who slipped through cracks. "I used to think I was invisible," Amara said during her speech, "but invisibility doesn't mean you don't matter. It just means someone hasn't looked closely enough yet." The crowd applauded. In the front row, Daniel grinned proudly. Mrs. Patterson squeezed his hand. Life did not become perfect. There were still challenges, still grief, still memories that hurt. But Amara had learned something profound. Karma is not magic. It is not revenge dressed in justice. It is the echo of who we choose to be when no one is watching. She had chosen kindness when she had nothing. She had chosen generosity when she was starving. She had chosen hope when she was alone, and the world slowly had answered. One evening, years later, Amara stood on the same abandoned house steps where she once whispered into the dark. The house had been restored and now served as transitional housing for children in need. The moon hung full above her. "Daniel," she called playfully, "I'm here." "I'm right behind you," he laughed. He joined her, older now, with grease under his fingernails from the auto shop he owned. They looked at the house glowing warmly. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but I don't stay there." He nodded. Mrs. Patterson, walking slowly with age but stronger in spirit than ever, approached them. "You two still talking to the moon?" she teased. "Always," Amara smiled, and the older woman looked at them, at the life that had unfolded from a lost wallet in a small act of honesty. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" Daniel asked. "For teaching me," she replied. Amara shook her head gently. "You were always capable of learning." They stood together under the night sky. 3 souls once separated by circumstance, now bound by choice. The girl who had been abandoned was no longer alone. The brother who had been lost was found. The woman who had been hardened by survival had rediscovered her heart. And somewhere, in the quiet arithmetic of the universe, the scales had balanced, not through punishment, but through compassion returned. Because karma, at its most powerful, is not about getting even. It is about growing so luminous in your goodness that darkness has no choice but to retreat. And Amara, once a forgotten child on cold stone steps, had become light.